Thanks everyone for coming. We'd like to kick off this event for our Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center here. The first order of business, I'd like to invite Jim McGuffin-Cawley up to offer the university welcome.
So thank you, Nick. Welcome. So good morning. It really is my pleasure, though, to welcome everybody here to the nation's largest open access, university-based innovation center and makerspace, Sears ThinkBox, right here at Case Western Reserve University. The first thing that I'd like to do is to express my sincere thanks to John Dyke for joining us here today. John is the CEO of the Clean Energy and Sustainable Manufacturing Innovation Institute, and I am extremely excited about launching the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center, the SMIC, here today. Now at ThinkBox, our vision is to inspire, to educate, and to empower an inclusive community to explore, innovate, and solve problems. And Nick gave me just space for 2 slides about ThinkBox. So after we finish this event, we're going to have a tour of the facility, and you can really see sort of the scale and the scope of what goes on here. So I thought I'd use these 2 slides to talk about the impact. And the first one is a histogram that you cannot really read. But what it shows is where the vertical axis there is time of day. It starts from midnight at the top. And you can see in every hour of the day, in the fall semester, there was a student here in ThinkBox. So several of the floors are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some of the floors are open from noon until 7, open in the morning for classes. It adds up to 25,000 visits. It also, if you look at individual IDs, it's 2,450 different students, which is about 40% of the student body. And so as you go through and you see the building and you see the equipment, you can think about the number of budding, young, bright people who are making use of the space and coming out with the benefits that we associate with it. But I said open access. So I also have a pie chart that's maybe a little bit easier to read. In the upper right-hand quadrant, the big blue wedge is at 25,000 visits from the students. If you add the orange one together, that's the graduate students, it's about 40% of our users. What's interesting, I think, to the group that's here today is over the orange one on the left, the gray one, those add up to just shy of 30%, and those are our community users. So as we are establishing the SMIC and building all these bridges and relationships, we are moving from a really strong foundation. And there's a lot of great interactions. I'm going to be teaching the last module in my class based on some things that a community user taught me just through incidental collisions, intellectual collisions. Now, I thought Nick was going to mention I got about something between 3 and 4 jobs here. And I'd like to kind of close the welcome by referring to all of them. So I do serve as the Interim Vice President for Research and Technology Management, and that lets me work really close with Nick and with the whole Isaacs team, the IOTC, to collaborate with the nonprofits and the whole community. And so it is these efforts from this team that causes things like the SMIC to exist. So it's really great to have that role at the university. I am the faculty director of ThinkBox. It gives me great personal satisfaction that a lot of the technical work for the SMIC is going to be based out of here, because this is exactly what we want to be able to do. We want to take all the advanced manufacturing equipment, leverage the technical expertise of the staff, and really work directly with the small and medium-sized manufacturers in the larger area as they move along their smart manufacturing journey. And then with my colleague John Lewandowski in the back, we're members of the faculty of the Materials Science and Engineering Department, We both had a long-standing personal connection to processing, to manufacturing, and we're really committed to integrating the students, both the undergrads and the graduate students, in the activities of the SMIC and more broadly in SESMI. And then finally, I have the pleasure of serving as the university's representative to the board for Magnet. And it's really exciting to see all these logos on the screen and be excited about the bridging between the academic, the industrial, and the economic development communities that exist to serve the region. It really is building on and then really strengthening the traditional strength of manufacturing in the region. So it is a partnership of many. I'm very interested in what the panel is going to say, and I just want to, again, welcome everybody here today.
Thanks, Jim. It gives me great pleasure to introduce John Dyke, the SESMI CEO, to come up and give us an overview of SESMI, the network that they operate, the Department of Energy's role in all of this, and the criticality of manufacturing from the national standpoint. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, good morning. It truly is an honor to be here today and to see the many months, too many months of effort and work on the part of a lot of great folks and friends to see this come to fruition here today. This is an exciting time. I think for the first time in my career, manufacturing operations has become strategic for manufacturers. I reflect on 20 years ago working at that time for Rockwell Automation and hearing from a Ford executive saying that Ford was all about the brand and implying that at the end of the assembly line, the most important thing that Ford does is put their little logo on the car. The manufacturing operations is absolutely secondary to Ford Motor Company. And yet today, Ford says that manufacturing operations and how they make things is Ford's strategic value. And so this is emblematic of how manufacturing has become a renaissance here in the U.S. This is emblematic of how this country once again values its manufacturing operations. And so we're thrilled at this time in this place to partner with Case Western Reserve University to launch this exciting thing that we call a Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center. As I welcome you from my perspective and share a few minutes worth of my reflections and SESMI's thoughts on how we're excited to partner with Case. Let me start for a few moments by sharing with you SESMI's vision for manufacturing. We're funded by the Department of Energy, but we're focused horizontally on trying to democratize smart manufacturing. And from our perspective, I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by that, but at the end of the day, smart manufacturing has become a core capability recognized by the federal government, and they've funded SESMI to drive smart manufacturing capabilities, technologies, business practices into the marketplace using our core strength, which is our membership. And that membership is reflected here in this community. I'm excited also to say that SESMI has 4 staff here within a 30-minute radius of Case Western, including myself. A few folks asked me this morning when I flew in, I was thrilled to say I live 32 minutes in that direction. And so we kind of, in fun, call this SESMI East. This is our new headquarters for SESMI East. For those of you that don't know, yeah, all right. Our core focus is on championing and elevating the ideas and solving problems that will create value for manufacturers. And specifically here at this Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center, focusing on small, mid-sized manufacturers, not to the neglect of large manufacturers, but frankly, one of the core realizations I think for most folks is that Fortune 1000 manufacturers have deep pockets. They can spend money, even though it's costly and complex for them as well. They have the deep pockets and they can afford. They have access to the domain expertise, the vendors that are out there, the implementation expertise. They have access to these capabilities. Most small, mid-sized manufacturers don't. And so our efforts here through this Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center are all about bringing the smart people and the right technologies and the right business practices to the small, mid-sized manufacturing community in a way that scales, in a way that's practical, in a way that actually provides genuine value for small, mid-sized manufacturing. On this slide, you see our three key ideas around championing manufacturing practices, around educating the current and future workforce, and truly accelerating and amplifying the adoption of smart manufacturing. So the Department of Energy, as I mentioned, funds SMIC. We have $140 million over the course of a 5-year period to find and create and accelerate innovation in manufacturing. There's a lot of words on this slide, but we have focused on those challenges and those opportunities in manufacturing that will enable the entire ecosystem to improve. We've identified that ecosystem in these 5 stakeholder sets, from the manufacturers, obviously, to the systems integrators, to the technology providers, the vendors, the machine builders, and of course, academia, the labs, the not-for-profits, the associations that are so much a part of bringing these capabilities and these ideas forward. So in fact, I love the three banners here. What CASE represents from our standpoint is what we've been really aggressively trying to drive forward, which is building a center of gravity, a place where, center of gravity for smart manufacturing, a place where people that are trying to make sense of the noise, trying to distill the noise into some meaningful strategy and roadmap to begin or continue or accelerate their smart manufacturing journey. And so the notion that we've got a great existing, well-established organization here at CASE that has relationships and partnerships with industry, that knows their local manufacturing extension partnership here with Magnet and is strategically engaged with them, that has a strategic emphasis on helping their community and helping the small, mid-sized manufacturers in particular. That's the hallmark of what we've been looking for as we've established a small network of these innovation centers across the country. This is one of 7 now, but it's the one that's uniquely focused on small, mid-sized manufacturing, which is, again, this is in my backyard. This is a uniquely compelling and important and strategic thing from a personal perspective as well as a professional perspective. We talk about the vision. I mentioned that our vision at SMIC is to accelerate the democratization of smart manufacturing. And the word democratization to us is essentially a business model idea. The notion that when you democratize something, you make it available to the masses. The best example I can think of is the Microsoft approach to a database versus Oracle. Microsoft built SQL. They have a free version. They have an enterprise version, but it's basically built for the masses, and it's cost effective. Their entire business model is designed to bring it to the masses. Versus Oracle was a powerful database and a powerful set of technologies, but their capabilities are not for the masses. They're big, monolithic, and expensive, and they sell a fraction of what Microsoft does, which is okay. That's a good business model, but democratization is about driving these capabilities into the marketplace at scale and at a cost and complexity level, or said more effectively, in a way that's not complex, in a way that's cost effective and affordable for this market segment. We've focused on 3 core pillars around technology and democratizing technology, around knowledge, and around the actual way of bringing a community together, around innovation to move away from a proprietary way of thinking and a proprietary way of building solutions so that you can crowdsource things, you can open source things. Those ideas are anathema in manufacturing operations. The IT world has been open sourcing things and working together to collaborate and solve problems and innovate for 2 decades now. On the plant floor, it's every man for himself, every woman for herself. It's a way of doing business that has to be transformed. So on the knowledge side, one of the key things that we've been doing together with the MEP program, together with the SMICs, is to look at a framework, create a framework for small, mid-sized manufacturers to make sense of the noise. As I mentioned before, there's an unbelievable amount of smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0, digital transformation noise in the marketplace. Kevin Jones is one of my dear friends and the CEO of a manufacturing organization that you'll meet in a few minutes. He made me aware of this a while back and sort of cemented what I had heard many times before, that the noise in this space is overwhelming. How is a small manufacturer supposed to make sense of all that noise? How do you know where to start? How do you know who to trust? And so this notion of a vendor agnostic, rich set of capabilities and domain expertise that's here to make sense of that noise and distill that noise into a clear set of strategies and a journey that you can begin, that you can step into or understand where you are on that journey, and then accelerate your path forward in a trusted environment. That's what SESMI and this Innovation Center, Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center, is all about. So the tools and the proactive efforts and the investments to take you from one step on this journey to the next step and understand how you can create value for your organization, regardless of where you are in terms of maturity, in terms of your existing capabilities. That's a vital aspect of how we can drive this forward. As I mentioned, Case Western Reserve University is one of 7 official innovation centers that we're kicking off now. We've had several launched over the last year or so, 4 more to be kicked off here in this quarter. This represents, I believe, the most compelling set of innovation, smart manufacturing innovation in any domain. This represents industry and technology capabilities brought to bear on really contemporary but significant challenges facing manufacturers. Just to name them briefly, UCLA is where we're headquartered as an institute, so that's the initial SMIC. We have North Carolina State University, focused on pulp and paper, focused on biopharma, and on the Nonwovens Institute. We have RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, up in the Northeast. Here, obviously, Case Western Reserve University, Purdue in Indiana, FC, Fan Zelstra in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And one state to the east, we have Penn State, New Kensington, which is a part of Penn State, obviously, and focused on their community and bringing smart manufacturing to like in many ways like Cleveland, an area that decades ago was devastated by the industry kind of leaving their community and looking for ways to revitalize and to inspire manufacturers and educate manufacturers to reinvest in that difficult area. So that's the set of smart manufacturing innovation centers that SESMI is funding and SESMI is partnering with to drive these really important capabilities into the marketplace. There's lots to say, but hopefully we'll get a chance to interact with you and have additional conversations. I did want to close with an important invitation to join us in Pittsburgh for the Smart Manufacturing Experience. This is probably this is the country's largest smart manufacturing event. 2,000 to 3,000 smart manufacturing experts from across the region coming together to learn, to educate, to create value for manufacturers. This also happens to be co-led by SESMI together with the SME, the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, and coincides as well with our SESMI's annual Smart Manufacturing Summit, our member event. So we'd welcome you there, love to have you there. There's going to be a specific place for our MEP partners and our SMIC partners, our Innovation Center partners, to join us there and have the kind of visibility that we collectively deserve as we bring these important capabilities to the market. So with that, I'll hand the floor back to Nick. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thanks, John. So I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about what we'll be doing here in the SMIC. So while this is headquartered at Case Western Reserve University, this is clearly a collaborative effort, and we'll talk a little bit about the partners and what they're going to be doing. But first, a little personal reflection. As I've been thinking about my role in all of this, it occurred to me that my interest in manufacturing is based on a long history in the family. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was born on a small farm in Olmsted Falls, Ohio, a little west of Cleveland Hopkins, and through around the turn of the previous century. And through apprenticeships and on-the-job training, became a machinist and tool designer, and eventually opened up his own little tool and die shop. It was Triscuit and Berea Road. It doesn't exist anymore because I-90 went through where it is. But that led to a transformative change in his family's standard of living, right? Moving from a very small farm to living near Cam's Corners, owning a home, and changed the standard of living for my dad and my aunt. That then happened again when my dad started working in my grandpa's shop, and then went on to work at a white sewing machine where he met my mom, and eventually got married. And my dad then went on to work for Ford Motor before maybe the brand was the main concern, becoming a process engineer, and then quality control engineer in Brook Park. And that led to a transformative experience for my family. I'm the youngest of 7, so all of us being able to go to college and develop careers. I've had the chance to work for several manufacturers during my career and really enjoyed that experience of making things. So that family history meant that we grew up with lathes and drill presses and band saws in the basement, and Dad was happy to teach us how to use the drill press, and important life lessons like remember to put your safety glasses on before you start using this. Remember to take the chuck key out before you turn the lathe on. Those are important lessons that has served us well. But I guess I want to say, like, this is a very personal thing in some sense, because I've seen the transformative opportunities that manufacturing provides for families and individuals, and then what it can do from a regional standpoint, right? And as other people have alluded to, my grandfather and father worked in sort of one of the golden ages of manufacturing, and we hope to see that rebirth happening on another golden age, and there are lots of opportunities happening now. I should say my dad's 89 now, still busy in his shop. The family Christmas present was a tabletop CNC machine. And so that ability to make things and deliver goods into the world, the creative process, and that manufacturing really has lived on in us. So I help run this institute called ISACS, the Institute for Smart, Secure, and Connected Systems. We're a multidisciplinary university-wide institute here. We have a core IoT focus, right, on sensing, control, communications, et cetera, and particular focus in smart manufacturing and connected health. And obviously smart manufacturing is what brings us here today. We also have a broad interdisciplinary interest in supporting proposals, research, education in this human plus technology space, right? It's one thing for us to deploy technology, but how do we think about the implications of that on individuals and society, right? What are the policy implications? So we drive research, and we drive education, and we drive industry and community engagement. And what I really like about the SMIC is it brings all of those things together and helps us fit into the continuum of workforce development, job training, bachelor's degrees, graduate degrees, research, and working closely with our community partners on economic development and our industry partners. This is also an effort of the IoT Collaborative, a partnership between Case Western Reserve University and Cleveland State University, generously supported by the Cleveland Foundation, without whose support a lot of these things would not be possible. That we have people who can spend time working at these interstitial spaces between the university and community, with industry, with other partners. So when we think about manufacturing here at the university, it touches lots of different departments and schools within the university. But a couple key ones include our Material Science and Engineering Department, represented by Jim and several other faculty here today. Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, represented by Dr. Gao in the back there, chairman of that department. Macromolecular Science and Engineering, or polymers. Electrical, Computer, and Systems Engineering. This is down at the motor control level, the motion control, the robotics, the machine vision. And then the Computer and Data Sciences program, right, which brings in the artificial intelligence, the computer science, the big data, the data sciences components. When we think about facilities, right, we're here in ThinkBox, one of the premier organizations like this, or buildings and community partners in the country. We have the Case Metal Processing Laboratory. We have a foundry. There aren't many universities that have a foundry where we can do small runs of exotic materials, castings, etc. We have the Advanced Manufacturing Mechanical Reliability Center that allows us to do extended life tests as well as deep characterization of different kinds of materials. And then we have the Swagelok Center for Surface Analysis of Materials, which houses our scan electron microscopy and surface chemical analysis equipment that is world class. And we can bring all of these things to bear for regional manufacturers in addition to our faculty, researchers, and students. So again, I mentioned this SMIC team here. This is not a case exclusive effort in any stretch. You know, we have Magnet, Ethan Karp here in the front, who's representing our Regional Manufacturing Extension Partnership and a close partner. Ethan's going to talk a little bit later about how this fits in to the Regional Manufacturing Blueprint called Make It Better. We have the Smart Manufacturing Cluster of Northeast Ohio, organized by Team NEO. So we have Jay Ferran and Erica Fitzpatrick here. That is the engagement component of what we do, the platform for convening and communications. We have Bennett AI, represented by Mike Yost, who's bringing AI to the small to medium-sized manufacturer. We have Advanced Manufacturing International, AMI, represented by Dan Nagy this morning, who's bringing in specific technologies and focused on small to medium-sized manufacturers and how we start moving them along their journey more rapidly. And then, as I mentioned, Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland State University and the IoT Collaborative. We have Nigamon Sridhar representing this morning, who'll be helping on the panel conversation a little bit. So, as I mentioned, Ethan will talk more about the Make It Better blueprint. And I mention this because this is important, an important reason for us to be supporting these efforts, right? Case is a research university, and arguably much of what we'll be doing in the SMIC is not truly research, it's good implementation and engineering practice. But this is an important opportunity for us to be a community partner, support things going on here in ThinkBox, and work with our students and our partners to help bring these things to light and move the needle for the region. So what are we going to be doing? Like, we've been talking about the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center. Like, what does that mean? Well, we have four main strategies. The first is outreach, getting companies, small to medium-sized manufacturers in particular, aware of what is possible, helping drive engagement and assessments with them to help understand where they're at in their journey, right, the people, process, technology, et cetera, and where they might go next to have an impact in their particular business. Every SMM is different. You know, they're in different industries, they have different capital structures, different cost pressures. So we need a slightly tailored approach. That's where the assessments come in. And then implementation, actually helping some companies move through the journey through direct execution of their SMM projects. So on the outreach side, this is going to be events and communications, again led by Team NEO Smart Manufacturing Cluster. The engagement will be happening here partially within ThinkBox as we build out these smart manufacturing innovation demonstrator platforms. We'll talk about those in a second. The assessment, using an assessment technique that the cluster and other partners have been using to help companies figure out where they're at. And from a maturity standpoint, again, around people, process, technology, and how to start moving forward actionably. And then implementation, which will be led by Magnet, Ethan, and Mike O'Donnell's team, helping these companies, a cohort of them, implement SM technologies and become lighthouses for other manufacturers. They will open their doors and invite those companies in. You know, they could be co-opetition in some sense, but to help them see how they took and updated their processes or their technology to improve yield, reduce WIP, whatever it might be within their environment. So we'll be doing these 2 demonstrators, as I mentioned. These will be up on the fabrication floor of ThinkBox. The first is a arc welding system. So Lincoln Electric is going to be graciously donating another arc welder to us, as well as a arc tracker system, which allows you to monitor the current and voltage waveforms of the arc delivered and be able to compare that against templates of what the weld engineer said that weld should look like, so we can monitor the quality of that long term. We'll be integrating that with SESMI's Smart Manufacturing Innovation Platform, or SMIP. And then we have a Haas Mini Mill up there as well, and we're going to be integrating that, working with AMI and Dan's team, integrating that into the mini mill or into the SMIP, and focusing on the applications that are relevant to SMMs in both these cases to have those be useful demonstrators. So companies come in, see, touch, feel things. And we'll be working with students on these, expanding the group of people who have experience touching the SMIP and preparing them to go out into industry, into manufacturing environments, to understand how MES systems and ERP systems work and how they start to integrate and how that actually drives the business. So with that, I'll just say thank you. Please connect and engage with us on this. We have a mailing list, and we'll be sharing this through the IoT Collaborative channels as well. And with that, I would like to invite the panel and the moderator up to the stage. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everybody. As folks are settling down, I'll begin by quickly introducing myself, and then we'll introduce everybody on the panel, and then I have what we hope is going to be a nice, robust conversation about where we're going to go with this awesome initiative. I'm Nigaman Sridhar. I really like the way Jim framed it as having a handful of jobs. So I also have one of those things of a handful of jobs. I serve as a professor of computer science at Cleveland State University, and I'm part of the leadership team of the IoT Collaborative, along with Nick and a few others, Ken Loparo here at Case Western Reserve. I'm currently on leave from CSU. I'm at the National Science Foundation, serving as a program director focused on cybersecurity education and workforce development. So, so that's just a few of those jobs that I have. But this initiative, again, in my role as one of the directors of the IoT Collaborative, is really critical because it really brings together the universities and the community and industry in a way that truly brings everybody to the table and allows industry to really leverage the academic assets, the research university assets that CASE particularly brings to amplify what the region can do. So I'll start off, and we're going to go down the line. So this will be the boring part of the panel, right? Where we'll ask each of our panelists to introduce yourselves, but then we'll jump into some questions. So I'll start us off with Jay on the other side. Yeah, you're the end.
Good morning, everyone. Jay Ferran. I'm a Senior Vice President of Industry and Innovation at Team NEO. Team NEO is a regional economic development organization committed to the 18 counties of Northeast Ohio. We are an affiliate of Jobs Ohio, the state's private not-for-profit organization. And I know Glenn Richardson, the Managing Director for Advanced Manufacturing and Aerospace, is here with us today. Part of my role at Team NEO, along with my colleague Erica Fitzpatrick, is to lead the Smart Manufacturing Cluster of Northeast Ohio. It's a consortium of different organizations. Many of the people here today are part of this cluster, all intended to drive awareness, help create adoption of our 7,700 manufacturing facilities in Northeast Ohio. So it's great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, good morning. My name is Mike Yost. I'm a co-founder of an organization called Bennett. I'll be working here in the capacity of helping Nick and the team coordinate the activities from SESMI with all of the regional activities going on. I used to report to John Dyke. I led outreach for SESMI for 2 years prior to leaving about a year ago to focus on Bennett, which is a startup, and focused on crowdsourcing knowledge and understanding how to find experts and their expertise wherever they are. There are a lot of barriers to getting access for manufacturers to the questions that they have, and our efforts are to work with the small manufacturers and build out solutions that will help scale help for manufacturers of all sizes.
Nick Barron, Case Western Reserve University and the IoT Collaborative.
John Dyke, SESMI.
Kevin Jones, ECM Performance Materials.
Morning, I'm Dan Nagy. I'm Vice President at AMI. And AMI is a nonprofit organization. And our mission is to accelerate the digital transformation of small to medium-sized manufacturers. We're an unusual nonprofit in that we have a product, and we're always looking for more products that are suitable to put into small to medium-sized manufacturers. Of course, as a nonprofit, we have no sales quotas, so we're not pushing product. We're trying to find solutions for the SMMs. We are part of a larger organization called the Manufacturing Technology Deployment Group, and it's a holding company, also nonprofit, and our sister company is NCDMM, that you all may know. And they run America Makes and a number of other programs, mostly focused on Department of Defense.
Great, thank you. As you can see, there's a wide variety of different kinds of expertise that we can integrate into this conversation. So Dan, I'm going to start with you. So you just talked about the role of your organization in working with small and medium-sized manufacturers. But can you elaborate a little more on why is it important at this moment for SMMs to really seek help, and why do they need help in integrating advanced manufacturing technologies? What are some challenges, and how can this ecosystem come together to help?
Yeah, so I guess how I would start to answer that is that digital technologies, advanced manufacturing technologies, are widely known to help manufacturers, and the large OEMs, the large companies have integrated these technologies, but as John Dyke framed earlier, the small to mediums have not been able to take up this technology, and so some of those barriers are cost. Some of these systems are very expensive, so a small to medium-sized manufacturer might actually risk their business if they purchase the wrong thing to help their company. It's resources, and can be monetary, can be human, and so they may not have the people on board to actually integrate new technologies, digital technologies. And so a lot of times also they're just struggling to get their product out, and they really don't know where their choke points are in their production process, their pain points. So really a small to medium-sized manufacturer needs some technology that is focused towards them, something that is low cost, easy to integrate, easy to manage, and something that they can get a return on investment very quickly, that they can see that this is affecting their business. And so we're actually doing a couple of lighthouse projects in Pennsylvania funded by SESMI to try to show small to medium-sized manufacturers what a return on investment would be from having better visibility in the supply chain. The other advantage for small to mediums is is that they're getting some pressure from their OEMs to get visibility down through the supply chain. I think you've all heard something about supply chain resiliency. We've all suffered through things not being on shelves in recent times. Maybe you've gone to buy a new car and you can't get one because there's no parts available. And some of that is because workers can't come into work. But part of it also is just OEMs not being able to see down into their supply chain and manage supply chain disruptions. So these kinds of digital technologies at the small to medium level will help view what's happening in their production process. Why is that important? 98% of manufacturers in the United States are small to medium size, and it accounts for over a third of manufacturing revenue. So they're critical in the supply chain, and it's critical to move them on their digital journey.
Thank you. So let me flip that, Kevin. If I could go to you, you are an SMM. How does your company seek to benefit from this ecosystem?
Thanks. I didn't give our commercial. ECM Performance has been around since the late 70s, had a founder who started this business, and we are, in layman's terms, a giant industrial kitchen. And what I mean by that is if you just take a snapshot of your kitchen at home, you've probably got an oven. You've got some sharp knives. You might even have mixers and blenders. So look at that on a much grander scale. We take raw materials and process those, and everything in here, chairs you're sitting on, all of your clothes, the cars you rode, everything had to be processed. So we process things from synthetic rubber, do some natural rubber. We process a lot of raw minerals, calcium, a number of things that end up in applications such as adhesive materials, building supplies, asphalt applications. So a broad spectrum. And so we're a relatively small company, and I'll put what we do in terms of pounds of material that we process. This year, we will process anywhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 million pounds of material, which may sound large, but in the spectrum of the chemical space, it's not terribly big. We have demand right now from our existing base of business. I could process 100 million pounds this year if I had the capacity and the space and the people and the process. So this notion of smart manufacturing and how do we do what we do in a much more efficient, more productive, being able to pivot a lot faster is absolutely critical, because to take on additional volume and customers, you're going to take on much bigger headaches and challenges if you don't have the knowledge base and the information base in real time to be able to make changes and do those things. So this is, for us, really mission critical if we're going to grow and grow at a pace that can meet our customer demand and do it obviously in a profitable and achieve a return on the capital that we have to invest to be able to meet those growth objectives. So I hope that.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And I'm going to come back to you in a little bit to focus on some specifics as well. But Mike, let me go to you now. When we think about initiatives like this, right? I mean, the Field of Dreams tagline always comes up, right? If we build it, they will come, right? But we know that life is not that straightforward. Can you comment on what you might see as some headwinds that we might face and how we need to navigate those?
Yeah, absolutely. From a personal perspective, I spent the last 14 years or so in the industrial nonprofit sector. So I ran an industrial nonprofit called Mesa International. I mentioned before I worked for John for a few years, and I really got involved with Jay and the cluster here in Northeast Ohio probably 3 or 4 years ago. There's a ton of really, really good stuff going on here, nationally, all over the place. There are a lot of resources, a lot of programs, but what we tend to find is that manufacturers, I'll steal this line from the Manufacturing Works team, they talk about manufacturers are so busy working in the business that they don't have time to work on the business, right? And so probably one of the biggest challenges that I think that we face is that we can throw state money, we can throw federal money at problems, we can create programs and initiatives, but there's a real barrier to understanding, like who do I turn to, who do I trust, what should I go and do, and then actual delivery of those those resources and such. So I think it's a real challenge that we have as an industry. And maybe I just say one other thing, and I'll put a pin in it, I can come back to that later, but I do think one of the biggest challenges that we've faced for a long time is that the manufacturers themselves have been the silent voice in this conversation. John and I have worked together for 2 decades, and I just mentioned Mesa International. They've been around for 30 years, and they've had one manufacturing chairman. All the others are solution providers and consultants and people that are pouring themselves into wanting to help, but the manufacturers don't have the time or are focused on other things or what have you. So it's a real challenge to make sure that the manufacturers want to have a voice and drive this. So folks like Kevin, and that they have a place to do that. And that's part of the challenge that we have here is how do we engage people and give them something of value for their time and their investment.
Yeah, so we have some experience with having those kinds of conversations. Robert was just here a few minutes ago, but we had an experience working with small medium manufacturers a little while ago, and that's from the perspective of going to see what the problem is. If you ask them that question, one day it might be one thing, and then by the time you find a solution to it and come back to it, if you came back in 2 weeks, it's a different problem. So there's that. If I can actually go back to Dan, you mentioned some examples of some lighthouses. Can you go into a little more detail and maybe give us some examples of how those lighthouse projects came in? How did the people and the processes actually get it right, and what can we do better?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the lighthouse projects came to us through MEP, funded by John and his program at SMIC. And these couple of manufacturers is interesting. I'll just talk about Highwood. It's an outdoor furniture manufacturing company. And when COVID hit, the experts were saying, well, if you want to meet people, you should be outside. So everyone was buying this composite outdoor furniture, and their sales were through the roof, and they couldn't keep up. They sell through Amazon, and Amazon was giving them pressure also to see down into what was happening, and so the president of the company went down to the shop floor, talked to the shop floor supervisor, and said, I think we're running at about 50-60% efficiency. We need to get this up to 80%. And the shop floor supervisor said, we are at 80% already. We don't have much further we can go with changeover time. That's where the conversation stopped, because the CEO had no data to show that what was my machine runtime, what is my equipment effectiveness, and so that's where that whole process started. It was at the CEO level, understanding that he needed to be a data-driven business if he was to understand where his choke points were in his production process. Also, to find out how much time that they were using in changeover and tools for their CNC machines. And maybe employee A does it in less time than employee B. Maybe there's some best practices to learn also along the way. So it was not only utilization, but it was also workforce management. And so right now, we're still in the data collection phase, and pooling data and trying now to get full-blown analysis. But already they have, as a matter of fact, I have a live feed from their shop floor. They put it up for us to demo to people, that we can see their CNC machines running, and we can see their run time, how many parts that they're making. So they've already got much better control on what's happening on the shop floor.
Great, thank you. Jay, let me go to you. So we heard John and Nick provide overviews of SESMI and the SMIC. Can you speak a little bit about the Smart Manufacturing Cluster and how you see this initiative and the SMIC in particular working with the cluster?
It's going to be a great opportunity because, as John indicated earlier, there's a lot of noise, right? And companies don't know where to start. And the intent of the Smart Manufacturing Cluster is to simplify as best as we can in the messaging, so that the word I use often is that the message is coherent and nutritious. And the idea here is, how do you break this all down? And so with our partners, which are many across industry, across economic development, across academics, institutions, et cetera, we're trying to just make the message easy to comprehend and to get involved, to get started. We are the platform. We don't have the technical consulting capabilities that Magnet has, or that they have here at the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center, or some of the other institutions around town. What we try to do is put all of the information in one place and put it in a way that it's compartmentalized, that it's easy to access, right? So we love the fact that the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center is here, and how it's structured and positioned. And it's our intent to promote that out to so many manufacturers. As I think was said earlier, there's so many manufacturers that are working in the business, they can't work on the business. So we're trying to find a way to be able to connect with them on those moments that they are able to come up, bring their heads up. And so that's how we look at the Smart Manufacturing Cluster and what we're trying to accomplish.
Can I add one thing? Just one thing that's really important is that we have now, with the National Institute here, the opportunity to have a North Star to point at, right? So everywhere you go, people have messaging, people have assessment processes, et cetera, right? We all have them. So now we're working, and John and his team are working across the country, and we can work across the region to say, all right, well, here's a definition that we can work against and have some commonality so people can actually shoot at the same things. And I think that's a big value that the cluster is going to bring in working with the National Center.
Great, thanks. So Nick, so this is probably the question that's closest to my heart. Why Cleveland? Why Case Western Reserve? And I want to also ask you to answer one other part of this thing, which is, CWRU is a research university, but then we just talked about the practitioner's perspective here, and there's also the aspect of workforce development. What role do you see Cleveland playing in producing the next generation of workforce in advanced manufacturing?
Oh, there's like 4 questions.
That's right.
So the Midwest has a strong manufacturing base. As Jay mentioned, there's something over 7,000 small to medium-sized manufacturers within a short drive of Cleveland, tied into the automotive, the aerospace supply chains, construction, and many others. So that's why Cleveland. And we've seen job loss over the last several decades, as we talked about. Lots of various pressures on that, from wages and policy, et cetera. And I think there's still a strong interest in this region being makers, right, of making things. It's hard to create value in the world. Creating things that are valuable, capital goods, et cetera, is critical. Why Case? We have a strong legacy of manufacturing, right? In many ways, Leonard Case's vision for the university was around practical engineering, applied science to solving real-world problems. And we have a number of faculty here who are driving manufacturing-related initiatives on the research side and the education side, helping students understand how to deploy technologies in foundries, right? How to use augmented reality to think about manufacturing environments. The metallurgy, the material science components, the operations and capabilities in the School of Management and supply chain logistics, it makes a lot of sense. From the regional standpoint in the workforce development, we're one of many partners here, right? We work with Cleveland State very closely on the IoT Collaborative and related initiatives in connected health and manufacturing and education and joint curriculum. We have our community college partners, Tri-C, Lorraine Community College, and Lakeland in particular we work closely with, who address different components in the workforce creation. And we believe that there's additional opportunities that we didn't get into today to borrow and leverage SESMI resources and resources at the other smart manufacturing innovation centers, like FZ up in Michigan is focused as a significant workforce development component, and they want to come here and offer some of their curriculum when it makes sense to our manufacturers, our students, our community partners. Did that answer most of the questions?
I think to me, yes, but I'm hoping that everybody else gets it as well. So let me switch gears and go to John. So you gave us a really nice overview this morning, but as you think about this particular SMIC, what are your priorities? What are SESMI's priorities for this region, and what should we be thinking about?
Yeah, thank you. That's the question, right? I think we talk about Case being an engineering and research university. The problem that I think we need to research and aggressively invest in and innovate around and bring to the marketplace is how can we accelerate and how can we drive complexity out and drive costs down for these digital transformation initiatives. And that's where I think this incredible intersection of capabilities, people, resources, partnerships, focus, investment come together at SMIC in a very, I think, at this SMIC in a very compelling way. I'm going to come back to a comment that Dan made before about the specific manufacturer that he was referring to, and the fact that the CEO has a gut feel that his utilization is 50% and the folks in the plant think they're at 80% or whatever the number happened to be. In 20 plus years of implementing smart manufacturing systems or manufacturing IT solutions in manufacturers, I've learned to expect one thing. The delta between what the data tells you and what the pre-digitization numbers are is about 25% absolute, meaning they think based on manual data collection and OEE calculations on paper and continuous improvement dashboards, they think their OEE is 80%. We implement a digitization system and it's about 50%. That's the average across the board. That is a huge dynamic. And it brings you to the point where Kevin may think that his utilization is 90% in his factory and he's looking for new capacity, new sites. The reality is he's probably at 50% to 60% and has that opportunity to drive additional capacity with existing resources, or at least not measurably increasing his facility or his resources. Now, I'm not saying that about Kevin specifically. That's the dynamic, though, in the Institute. If we think digital transformation creates value, we need to inspire and decomplexitize and drive these capabilities into the marketplace for the small, mid-sized manufacturer more than anybody else, because that's where the innovation is happening. That's where the capital is pointed. That's where the workforce is available to be upskilled and brought into a modern contemporary environment. So this is a really, really important dynamic and I think a huge opportunity for us. And that's why, aside from the fact that this is in my backyard, this is a really, really strategic place for these pieces to come together.
Great. Thank you. That was so. Let me take that to Kevin specifically, right? Because I mean, I think no, no. I'm sure from your perspective, right? I mean, your priority is to minimize operational disruptions and keeping things going so that you can actually execute on time, right? So can you share with us an example or two where what we're talking about at the macro can translate into your shop?
Yeah, I think probably one of the greatest examples that I can, off the top of my head, when we took over the business, the metric for success was based on how many pounds of material could be processed in a given day, and we looked at how on-time delivery and all those things to customers, all the things that seem to make sense. And what we discovered, just as John mentioned, is we were woefully overestimating what our efficiency and output and all those levels were. And so once we really took a look at that, did the basic time studies, and started assessing just in a real simplistic way, we saw immediately ways that we could improve. Now you bring in the ability to digitize the process, the ability and we're not there yet, but we're trending towards being able to know in as close to real time how we're processing. So from 11:15 in the morning to, let's say, 12:05, why did production slow down? Or why did it increase? And there's a number of factors. There could be, we do a lot of what's called ambient grinding. So some of it's just based on how cold it is or what the humidity is in a given day. But we can now track that, and we can start to utilize that data so that in a given afternoon or a given shift or whatever, we can know exactly what to expect, how to keep our equipment maintained, and so those things in a very pragmatic way are things that, and it's not just our business, I'm talking to other small manufacturers who are struggling with the same types of challenges. How do we take what we're doing? Because if you just say, okay, we're going to just throw a bunch of money at acquiring more capacity, but you haven't improved your detailed and your processes at the operating level, you're just going to compound a negative situation. So
great, thank you. So I'm now going to go to Jay and Mike for two sides of the same question, a similar question at least, right? So Mike, you led SMIC's outreach efforts for 2 years. Where do you see the greatest value for the greater Cleveland ecosystem in having a SMIC presence here? And on the flip side, Jay, and you guys can figure out how you want to do this. From Team Neo's perspective, how can the SMIC really serve as an attractor to this vibrant economy? So it's really the same question of and I'd like to hear from Mike about the SMIC perspective, and from Jay from the Team Neo perspective.
So I would say a couple of things, probably two main things. One, they're working on problems that most people don't know we need to be working on, right? So the focus of the innovation platform is on data contextualization and interoperability, right? So when I hear Kevin talk about the things that he has, or John throw him under the bus for how low his OEE is, I'm sitting here thinking we can help, right? There are ways to help. There are things that we can work on. And there are people out there that can help. But their group is working on saying, look, how we collect data, how we contextualize that, how we make it so that different organizations or different applications can access the data and make something out of it. That is a huge problem in industry that the vast majority of people that are in industry have no idea it's a problem, right? So I think that they're going to solve a lot of problems for us that we don't know need to be solved. And so it'll make some things easier for us to just sort of adopt and use and implement, as opposed to trying to figure out on our own. And then the other piece I would say goes back to the point that I mentioned earlier, as far as them having a definition, having a standard at which and I'm not saying we're going to adopt it, just carte blanche, but it gives us something to shoot at and work as a region to work through and see what works, what doesn't, how do we help them change their thinking based on what we have going on here, and then how do we change our thinking by the guidance that they're providing. So that's really sort of the main things I think is great about the national presence and the things that they're working on.
Great, thank you. Team NEO's job one is to help the region become more competitive, right? So to help our economy grow. And historically, we have measured success or lack of success based on output, GDP. Okay, we're competitive or we're not. The more we've looked at this now, we've come to understand it's really about creating a competitive marketplace, but also one where many, and if not all, can prosper. So clearly this SMIC, whatever we're going to call it, is a great opportunity to help more participate. When we've peeled back the whole competitive and prosperous opportunity, we've identified the enablers. That means for a market to be competitive and prosper, it has to be talented. It has to be innovative. It has to be resilient. And it has to be equitable. And so now, as a region, we've come together with so many of our other partners to use what we call the Vibrant Economy Index as the go-forward measure for, are we a successful, growing community, region, and ultimately state? This, you think about all those enablers, and what we're talking about here in the proposition of the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Center, it addresses talent. It addresses innovation, it addresses resilience, and it addresses equity. So that, to me, is why this is going to be a game changer for how we think about growing our economy. And this is just one of the many assets that we're going to leverage.
Great, thanks, Jay. Nick, really briefly, could you talk about how this SMIC fits within the larger ecosystem of ISACs, as well as with the IoT Collaborative?
Sure, I alluded to some of this earlier, right? So ISACs has a focus on what we refer to as the industrial Internet of Things, right? Contextualized in smart manufacturing, smart cities, connected healthcare, et cetera. And this piece of what we're doing here is the next step in our evolution in the smart manufacturing context, right? Bringing the collaboration together, bringing the funding together to allow us to move forward in some very actionable areas, provide some educational opportunities, build some new capabilities within Sears ThinkBox, and support our community. A piece of ISACs that's deeply rooted with the IoT Collaborative that is critical from our university's perspective as well as our funders' perspective is that we are more than an ivory tower, that we are deeply engaged and having a positive impact in our community. Our president, Eric Kaler, has sort of reinvigorated that component of the university's mission, that we are successful when our community is successful. So much of what we're doing is bridging some of these barriers between the academic community, the nonprofit and economic development communities and industry communities. And I think there's been a realization maybe in the last few years among some of our partners of the role for universities in economic development that maybe this region hasn't been as thoughtful about in the past, but has become much more thoughtful about in the last few years. And this, I think, is another step in that direction of the university being able to play a role in economic development, beyond just bringing in research dollars and talent creation, education, right, which are critical. I don't want to underplay those, but we can do a little bit more than that. That also serves the research and education mission of both universities.
Great, thank you so much. John, I'm going to give you the last word, but go ahead if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, so if we think about the fourth industrial revolution and what that brings to the table, it's still young. 10 years into at least talking about the fourth industrial revolution, I would say that we're just barely scratching the surface of what that brings to the table. But it's been an important epiphany for me to see that in these past 10 years, the innovation has really happened sort of in the IT realm. Really, the Microsofts, the AWSs, the Googles, building AI, machine learning capabilities, and they're the tip of the spear for the fourth industrial revolution. The rest of us sort of in the OT world, the operations plant floor world, have really not done much yet to catch up to where that technology is going. And academia, for the most part, has lagged that and has not been innovating at the pace that they need to. That's why we're so excited by what CASE has been doing. They have been focused in this area. Isaacs was a huge factor in our analysis of which academic institutions across this country are the best suited for smart manufacturing and to engage in this process, because they're already focused on it. They're already engaged. They understand what they do and where the opportunity is to continue to grow. Unfortunately, most of academia in this country is not in that place. But we're like I said, this CASE is one of a small handful of organizations, academic institutions in this country that is part of that evolution, that is engaged and is engaging the community and trying to solve really important problems. So I don't mean to throw the rest of academia under the bus. It's building muscle memory. It's building capabilities. Most technology providers are struggling in the same way. Technology, as you know, is moving so quickly outside of the plant floor. We're struggling to catch up, but it's dovetailing those two together and narrowing the gap between those two, which is kind of what's happening here, which I think is so important.
So I'm going to give you the last one. I want you to go one more level up. You used the word epiphany. I'm going to take you even higher. The last couple of years have been hard for the country, for the world. We've seen the pandemic. We've gone through supply chain disruptions. We've seen a real reckoning with systemic racism. There's a war going on in Ukraine. When you look at all of this going on from your vantage point in SESMI, what gives you optimism and hope, and what role do you see manufacturing playing in bringing that hope to the world?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll do my best to answer as practically as I can, because we do see the U.S. as lagging both Europe and Asia in terms of the adoption of digital transformation. Industry 4.0 didn't come from the U.S. It was initiated and has been aggressively adopted across Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and even Asia, including China, more aggressively there than really anywhere else in the world. But I would say in the last 5 years, particularly in the last 2 years through the pandemic, the U.S. has really come to the conclusion that manufacturing and digitization is key to our future as a competitive manufacturing nation. Innovation has never been a challenge, has never been an issue for the U.S., right? We are the hallmark of manufacturing innovation globally, but innovation at a pace that allows us to maintain that competitive and grow that competitive capability. I love the alignment with what Jay talked about as NEO's goal to create a more competitive manufacturing environment. That is our objective. That's our mandate. That's what our funds are supposed to be doing. That's my number one objective for SESMI, to drive and create a more competitive manufacturing capacity here in the U.S. So from our perspective, seeing manufacturing grow in its ability to be more competitive, the recognition that digital transformation is one of the most foundational capabilities that we need to develop. That's not happened in my career. I think in any of our careers up here, we all have the gray hair or no hair to reflect our experience, right, Matt? So yeah, I think this is the best place to be right now from a manufacturing standpoint. This is the time to sort of build and invest and thrive and build that muscle memory that we've had in previous industrial revolutions, but don't yet exercise adequately here in this time.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you all, gentlemen, for your incredible wealth of knowledge. And I think, is Ethan coming up to close us out?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I have never been in a room and watched a panel that said literally everything I would have said. Like, I don't think there was a single thing about small and medium manufacturers and the need for this and the international need for this than this great panel. So I'm not going to repeat what they say. Our role, of course, is to help small, medium manufacturers get these technologies. Super excited that SESMI coming in to support this work, connecting us all up. And what I'm going to focus on is that this is part of a bigger initiative for our region. And that's this blueprint. We'll have a video here at the end of my talk just to say some rah-rah as we leave. We set about creating a blueprint for what the future of manufacturing needs over the next 10 years using hundreds of people's input. It is not a magnet thing. It is something that the community has embraced. And the whole idea is that there are lots of initiatives that go on. But working together is the only way we will actually be able to pull these things all together. So you mentioned lighthouses, right? So over the next, right now we have about 12 of them in the region. Over next year it'll be 40 hopefully, using the SMIC and what we're doing here in collaboration to get more companies out there, using the infrastructure of Team Neo and the Smart Manufacturing Cluster to advertise to other manufacturers to come see it, get that catalytic effect going, which is fundamentally, we are many, but not nearly enough to actually help every company one-on-one. Companies have to start doing it by themselves once they see what can be done. So, we have wonderful examples of the type of collaboration that we need. A lot of this started back in the pandemic when we were talking all the time with Jobs Ohio, we were thinking of how do we make personal protective equipment, thousands of manufacturers stepping up to make millions and millions of life-saving and job-saving pieces of equipment. That experience has shown us how well we can work together and how all of these partnerships can really add to something much, much bigger for everybody in our community over the next 10 years. Make it better is the theme. That is what we went out to say because it plays to the manufacturers in all of us, that continuous improvement, right? Everything we talked about, lighthouses, step by step, maybe implementing this technology is not just a small step, maybe it's a big step, but it is always improving. It's also making it better because every single time we deploy one of these technologies, every single time we improve a manufacturer, every single time people like Kevin invest back in their manufacturing, that's going to make it better for every single person because that's more jobs, that's more good careers, that's more wealth coming into our economy, which is half, as you'll see, half dependent upon manufacturing. So that's really all I want to say. I just want to say a big thank you. Proud to be here, proud to be part of this initiative. This is really bringing together a lot of things that will support this blueprint. And if we have that video on the clicker that you teed up.
We all want things to be better.
I knew in order for me to give my children what they needed, I needed more money. I needed training. I needed a school, and I needed a job.
I need to have something to have some purpose in my life, make my life fruitful.
The good thing is, here in Northeast Ohio, we are masters of the comeback. We make our own opportunities. Manufacturing is our proud past. It's our bright future. We can make things better because we make the things that run the world. The things that build communities, feed families, save lives. Manufacturing is the engine that drives Northeast Ohio.
Manufacturing is a powerhouse in Cleveland, but we're falling behind on innovation and technology. Transformation is coming fast. We can let it happen to us, or we can choose to lead it.
It's time to forge a new future.
We can't just rebuild. Now's the time to reinvent our industry, to transform the way we work, to really innovate. And if we get this right, we can make things better for everyone.
We can lead the world in smart manufacturing, digital, automated, connected. We can be the capital of manufacturing education. We can invent the future. But this bold vision needs bold action.
We have an opportunity to reimagine manufacturing in a way that makes a real impact on our community and every single individual who lives in it.
Together, we can make things better.
Manufacturing has changed my life.
Manufacturing has changed my life for the better. Because I go to bed with a purpose and I wake up with a passion, for my job in manufacturing.
Together, we can change lives and our region's future if we do 4 things. Train the talent we need, transform with technology, win with innovation, and boldly lead our companies and our industry. If we do all this,
We can make it better.
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 we have a blueprint to lead the world, to create thousands of jobs. We have a powerful team of companies and community leaders.
We're all on the same mission, and I think we can pull it off. I really do.
We just have to do what manufacturing does best: make it better.
The SMIC brings all of those pieces together. I truly believe we are all making this better together. And I thank you guys all for being here. Thank you for letting me close out. Nick, back over to you to do tour instructions. Awesome.
Thanks, Ethan. So thanks everyone for joining us this morning. This is the first of what we hope will be a sequence of events focused on different aspects of technology, people, process, adoption, etc. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the upcoming electric vehicle manufacturing conference that the cluster is helping to coordinate April 13th. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, follow up with any of us. We'll get you the registration information. With that, thank you. I hope everyone stays engaged. If you're interested, we have one of our awesome student workers over here today, Omar from ThinkBox, who will be happy to give us a tour and take us through the awesome building, see some of the fabrication and prototyping facilities, etc. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to my team, especially Yvette, for helping pull off the event today. So if you're interested in the tour, we'll be convening over here by the chairs. Please help yourself to some more coffee and pastries, etc. And thank you.